2 weeks ago, we talked about how unfinished projects or open loops fragment your mind, drain your energy, compound, and build an identity for you of someone that doesn't finish what they start. Last week, I shared the process for organizing and closing these open loops, as well as some troubleshooting tips for the problems that inevitably spring up while trying to complete a big project. But what if you understand the process, but can't seem to actually do it? The concrete steps will always boil down to just do the thing until it's done. And for many years, I thought it should just be that simple. So I got even more discouraged when I just couldn't seem to finish projects that I sincerely cared about. I'm making this Open Loops mini-series now because I started a violin live loop project 6 years ago and let it get stuck at about 90% complete. And I'm finally swinging back to wrap it up, which feels so good. So I want to get down the insights, the processes, and the mindset shifts that are really making the difference. The process is helpful for finding clarity and moving forward. And the troubleshooting can really help you overcome stuck points. But it's the mindset and identity shifts that really flip the switch. These are the mental reframes that transformed things I know I should do into things I'm actually doing. The first mindset shift I want to touch on briefly is more of a meta insight because it's a broad context that lays a framework for understanding a lot more of these specific mindset shifts on a deeper level. A lot of these specific insights and mindset shifts relate back to a larger insight, which is that what I used to think of as an individual goal is actually a constellation of goals. A lot of these goals we weren't even consciously aware of, and a lot of times they're fragmented, pulling in different directions. So if we can see them more clearly and prioritize them, they become harmonized to help pull us in a common direction. That may seem a bit abstract or dense, so let's dive into some specific mindset shifts to build out a context and then cycle back to really flesh that out a bit more. Mindset shift. There's no most important project, and even if there was, I'd rather finish projects out of order than not finish them at all. For years, I was constantly jumping around from project to project because my mind is constantly reassessing what the priority is. And it's good sometimes, of course, to reassess priorities, but it shouldn't be so often that I can never settle in to actually work on one. Every new project always feels more exciting or more important at first, but inevitably comes along another new, more exciting project. And this pattern obviously reflects in other areas of life too. My constant fear that I wouldn't be working on the right project kept me from finishing any major project. A few years ago, it finally clicked. I'd rather finish things out of order than never finish them. Maybe I did decide to finish something which is less important than something else, but who cares? As long as I finish it, then I develop that habit of finishing, and I can wrap it up and get to the most important thing and actually finish that most important thing because that's the momentum I've built. If in the next 10 years I finish a series of important projects to me, does it really matter that much what the order is? Like maybe very subtly, but the price of constantly jumping from one priority to the next is just so much higher than the cost of finishing things in the wrong order. This brings us to the mindset shift that becoming a person who finishes is the new #1 goal, beyond the project's local goal. I want to build that confidence and trust in myself, the identity of finishing, and realize that if I don't, I'm doing the opposite. I'm building an identity of someone who doesn't finish, and that becomes easier to play out over time. I don't want to carry that self-doubt into every project like I constantly did before, like, oh, am I actually going to finish this? By completing things, I build the confidence that, yes, I complete things, and it becomes a done deal. This touches strongly on this meta insight that it's a system of goals, that the individual project of this live looping had various goals, but the goal of becoming a person that finishes, as I elevated that, really defined that as a more important goal than whatever the individual local goals of the less than 3 project were, that made such a huge difference in clarifying and harmonizing everything. When I haven't consciously illuminated my total system of goals, a goal that I'm not even aware of can just totally kill progress. For example, with the less than 3 project, if I have this unconscious goal of proving that I'm brilliant, more prioritized than my goal of being a person that finishes, then it's going to be really difficult to finish it when I notice imperfections in my work that go against the narrative of being a brilliant person. It feels safer not to put out anything that could be criticized. But once I realize that I have the goal of proving my brilliance and see that it's actually pulling against my goal of finishing, then I can promote the goal of becoming a person that finishes. And as I step more into that identity, starting to finish projects becomes almost automatic because that's just who I am. This is where intentional identity shifting combined with concrete actions that reinforce that identity can become such a powerful reinforcing cycle. As I start to identify as a person that finishes, I take actions towards finishing, and as I see those actions and see that I'm finishing projects, that confirms for me that I am in fact that person that finishes. This also allows us to see our work more clearly through the perspective of how it relates to our real goals. And that leads us to the next mindset shift. Next mindset shift. Calibrate the context of what good actually means. I wasn't focused on perfection because the work really demanded it, but because of my own insecurity. I felt like releasing something meant I was saying, this is all that I'm capable of. So every little detail just felt huge. I lost perspective. I lost clarity about what the real goals actually were. When you zoom the microscope in and in and in, you can always find blemishes. So instead of micro-focusing on every little detail, I started to zoom out and see the totality. For this project, it was, is the composition beautiful? Yes. Is the video pleasing to watch? Yes. Does it make people feel something? Yes. Is it solid by live performance standards? Yes. So I can see that even the local goals of the project are being checked. And as I zoom out a level on my goals, I can also see that, well, I wanted to become a better performer. I wanted to refine a body of repertoire that I could reproduce live on stage with more confidence. Has it helped me to do that? Well, yes, that's also a check. And it's a check towards a larger goal of putting out a body of repertoire in my lifetime, if I put it out. And it's a check towards becoming a person who finishes, if I finish it. So it's not just good enough, it's actually good. Those little imperfections don't make it not good, they make it human, they make it real. Don't get lost in micro imperfections when the whole product is genuinely good. The question is not, is this perfect? The question is, does this achieve the real goals? Which leads us to the next mindset shift, which is that micro-perfectionism blocks global progress, blocks me from moving towards my real goals, and often makes me lose the perspective necessary for improving even this little detail that I'm fixated on right now. Attention to detail is great. I am glad that I'm a meticulous person, but getting so fixated on one little detail can stop me from making progress on what really matters to me. So when I zoom out from these micro imperfections, which are more just an attack on my sense of security as maybe not being a perfect classically trained violinist who just executes impeccably all the time, when I can let go of that goal of needing to prove that because I'm seeing that it's really pulling against my larger system of goals and everything I want to move towards, everything starts to flow much more naturally. And even if I decide those details are important, that I do want to improve them, oftentimes I've learned that obsessing over them isn't actually helping. At a certain point, another take of the same composition won't fix it, or just endless tweaking isn't going to make it better. I think about when I was a violin student first starting, learning Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. I could have kept practicing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star for 20 years until it's absolutely perfect, but that would have been ridiculous. I can play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star really beautifully now because I moved on to other stuff, practiced other skills, and came back to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star with everything I'd learned. Mindset shift. Trust in the iterative process. Finishing and starting again, and finishing and starting again often produces much better results than taking that same amount of time to just try to get one thing just right. And I think about a study I heard about making clay pots, how they had one group of people try to make the best clay pot that they could possibly make in 30 days. And then they had the other group of people just make one clay pot every day for 30 days. And at the end compared which group made the best pot. And the second group that just was iterating, that was just making something new every time, ended up with the single best looking pots, even though that pot they didn't spend so long in it as the one that was just refining it. And this is a wake-up call for me, because my insecurity has made me feel like I'm doing better by just putting exorbitant amounts of time into shaving things down, and there is, of course, value in attention to detail. We've talked about that. But at what point is it really not moving things forward? And at what point am I actually trading the opportunity to make my best pot, to make my best composition, because I never get to it, because I got stuck on my second one, my first one, my third one, that all these first ones that I just needed to get out and get through in order to get to the best stuff. I got stuck on those. I've burned so much time just trying to make one thing just right, rather than finishing it and moving on and trusting in the process. But when I think about it, would I rather you be so impressed that my first pot was so good, even though I spent like 50 pots worth of time on it? Or would I rather put out more and have the end results truly be better than this one, oh, how amazing for your first thing? Who cares? Who cares about that? Of course, my early work is not going to be as well refined as my later work. That's fine. I have output so much less than what's in my heart because I've let myself get stuck in this. Right now, I think it's probably better for me to get out 5 projects above 90% than one project at 99.9%. And that's where I am personally. But what's crazy about this in the context of this iterative process that we're talking about is that it's very likely that the 5th project that goes out at what I consider 90%, that 90% is actually better than the first project that I got to 99%. You know what I mean? And again, this is a delicate balance because there's absolutely value in trying to make something as best as it can possibly get, but we have to pay attention to the point of diminishing returns. We have to pay attention to, is this really getting better, or am I not able to let go of it because of my insecurity? And I'm disguising that as just being extra thorough. The key is to just be conscious of these different mentalities and intentional about when to apply them. It's very context dependent on the specific person, the phase of life, a whole bunch of factors. And I've personally just leaned way more towards perfectionism of one thing, which has just throttled my actual output. So I'm stepping more into that mindset shift that I can release and keep creating and trust that I will get better as I continue to create. Next mindset shift. This one piece doesn't have to represent everything. For so many years, I put so much pressure on my work because I wasn't releasing very much, because I kept getting in my own way. Everything felt super important, like it had to say, this is what I can do, this is how great I am, this is how brilliant I am. And that pressure, of course, just makes it feel impossible to put anything out. So that mindset shift that no piece of work can possibly represent the totality of who I am really helps snap me out of that. Helps me remember that a more complete reflection will come by building a body of work, a full repertoire. I don't need one little piece of the puzzle to be the entire puzzle. And this has gotten much easier as I've released stuff, especially after releasing Con. Just kind of realized everything can just be what it is. It doesn't need to be everything. So these are just some of the mindset shifts. I honestly have a lot more written down because I've been gathering these for quite a while now as I'm in this process of tying up and closing this open loop. But I feel like these are good to start with because really we want to just focus in on what resonates and get into the actual process, do the actual work, and try to connect with which of these mindsets, which one or two of these really resonated the most for you, and keep that present with you. It's much better to integrate deeply one or two mindsets than to just have the whole list of all 20 mindsets and just have it be this intellectual thing that went in and went back out. So let's do the work to just really bring this in, apply it to the work. Let me know what this shifts for you and what happens in your work when, for example, you start prioritizing becoming a person that finishes above everything else. So I love you. I'll see you in the next one where we'll continue this process.